where you've been, what you've done, and what you have done to you. You are the part of the journey that God knew you were going to be on. Well, you have heaven and you have earth. And in Isaiah 55, it says that God's ways are higher than our ways and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So up here in heaven, these are God's thoughts and his ways. And he says, as far as the heaven is above the earth, so are my thoughts higher than your thoughts and my ways higher than your ways. Is everybody with me? In between this is this big gap that's as high as the heaven is from the earth. And everything that is done in heaven is not yet done here on earth. But then Jesus says that we should pray that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So everything that is done here, all of this, has to find its way to earth. But when sin entered the world, when sin came, sin created a chasm and a gulf that now everything that's here can't communicate with everything down here. So he looked at this creation. He says, I got to bridge this gap. So how does he bridge this gap that is full of sin? He sends down Jesus. And Jesus comes down to earth, lives as a man, because Jesus is God in flesh. And he says, to connect heaven to earth, the bridge has to be made up of both. Because a bridge is not in one side or the other, but it's touching both sides. So in order for heaven to touch earth, for God and flesh to be reunited, the bridge had to be God and flesh. So Jesus says, I'm going to go so Holy Spirit can come. But the problem is the bridge, because that's the whole point. Taking people from here, taking what's going on earth and conforming it to heaven. And so he sends Holy Spirit. The problem is the bridge has to be what? So what he does is he says, I'm going to send Holy Spirit. But I'm going to send Holy Spirit and I'm going to put him in. Because when Holy Spirit lives in you, now this bridge becomes God in flesh. Just like Jesus. Jesus is God in flesh. But when the Holy Spirit lives in you, you become flesh in God. Oh my God. Jesus is God in flesh. But when the Holy Spirit lives in you, you become flesh in God. You might not be Jesus, but you are the closest thing to Jesus that is ever possible in the history of creation. That everything Jesus did, short of dying for you, because that's only something God could do, short of dying and rising up from the dead to save all of humanity, every other thing he did on earth, you can do. You should never feel rejected. You should never feel incomplete. You should never feel like you're less than rubbish. You should never feel powerless in your situation. You should never feel defeated. You should never be a victim. You should never be any of those things. Why? Because just like Jesus is God in flesh, Holy Spirit in you is God and flesh.